No, this one's mine.
Is mine. Okay. Oh.
Okay.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Wednesday webinar with Kim and I of FEWL. Tonight we have a bit of a departure from normal. We're going to talk about estrogen and estrogen dominance, that hormone that most people think is related to women, but actually is related to both genders. And the reason that we're speaking about estrogen dominance today is because I'm going to be a case study. As many of you might remember, that I had done the Dutch test at the end of last year, and I started our Radical Freedom program at the very beginning of this year as a result of my Dutch test. And the difference in my estrogen has been remarkable, not to mention the difference in my body and all the rest, but we'll talk about that.
Right.
So, Kim and I have been doing functional nutrition for upwards of 20 years. We've been working in this space with inflammation and gut health and detox and all those kinds of things way before even anybody realized that these were so important to health. So we are the co-founders, the two of us are the founders for FEWL. And as usual, we're going to take about 20 minutes to talk about our topic, estrogen, and then we're going to open up the floor for about 10 minutes of questions and answers. And as always, we're going to have a fantastic giveaway of one of our amazing products for anybody who types in and asks a question along the way. So that's basically what we're doing now. And Kim, how do you want to roll with estrogen and estrogen dominance tonight?
Well, yeah, tonight specifically talking about estrogen dominance in men and using Jeff as a case study and go into the specifics of where he was at last year, and specifically at the end of last year. We ran a Dutch test to see what his hormone panel was showing, and then we'll talk about his symptoms and all other symptoms associated with estrogen dominance that other men might be experiencing. We'll talk a little bit about how one might become dominant in estrogen, and then what you can do about it, and then specifically what Jeff did about it, and we'll show with his results how dramatically his estrogen changed. All right, so let's just get into, first of all, Jeff, 50-year-old man, hopefully you don't mind me saying that since you're our case study, 50 years old. I know that he was complaining of fatigue, belly fat, poor sleep, foggy brain. What else, Jeff? What were the main symptoms that you were really struggling with?
Oh, I had my cravings, diving into sugar and caffeine, and as well a little more alcohol than normal. I have flaky skin, really flaky skin, like dandruff, crazy. My hair was thinning. Sex drive, zero. What else? Oh, man boobs. My boobs were getting bigger than many women that I know. And belly fat. So I've always been really fit, and I eat really well. And over the last, especially 2 years, I've taken on starting FEWL and doing a few other things. So my hey Gretchen. So my health has definitely, as a result, started to take a bit of a nosedive. But really, I had gained more weight, 15 plus pounds, heavier than I've ever been in my life, and all of it was on my guts and my boobs. Yeah, so it's, I guess.
Your gut health had been a little more impaired than usual?
Yeah, my gut health also was going sideways. More gas, definitely. I'm happy to say that currently and normally I don't fart more than a couple times a day. But definitely coming up to when I started Radical Freedom, I was doing it multiple times every hour, sometimes every minute, and it was pretty raunchy. Yeah, and then I'd roll over in bed, and I just remember I kind of rolled to the side and I'd put my hand on my belly, and I'm like, oh my God, there's this blubberous thing that was just sort of flopping from side to side. My body odor was definitely higher. I noticed that when I sweat or when I was any kind of a stress, even at work, and not a major stress, but just even a little bit, that I would get a stinky body odor. And my oral, my teeth, my breath, same thing. I don't notice that I have bad breath. No one complains about my bad breath. I don't smell myself now, but certainly at the time it was increasing, and it was certainly unpleasant.
Muscle tone, difference in your muscle tone at that?
Well, like I said, because I was, I've been involved in the corporate world and doing a lot of stress, a lot of traveling, and because my diet was certainly not as good then as it was prior or even now. And I'm not saying it was really bad, but it was different. Yeah, my muscle tone is definitely taken a little bit of a slide for sure.
Okay. All right, so we have fatigue, belly fat, poor sleep, poor libido, low energy, bad breath, body odor, low motivation, foggy brain, lots of, and the addictive behaviors. You really were struggling
Correct.
with your sugar and coffee
Absolutely.
addiction.
Would not want to start my day without a cup of coffee. And I certainly was finding energy, looking more for sweets, and certainly enjoying having, a glass of wine. I was probably drinking about a bottle of wine maybe once every 10 days or so. It's not, compared to many people, that's not that much, but for me it was
a lot.
It was more.
Yeah. So.
And when you say low energy, I think I want to touch on this too.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't even have the energy. Literally, I knew that I would feel better getting outside or even going for a walk. I knew that I would feel better simply just moving. There's no freaking way I had the energy or the motivation to do it. I would do everything I could to find something else to do. And I had a foggy brain incident. This was really a big deal. I remember trying to write a check. And this was actually probably day 2 or 3 of starting Radical Freedom. But I believe it was a carryover from prior. I was trying to write a check, and I could not write my signature. It was this weird scrawl. In fact, I wrote a blog about it. If you look at our blogs, I couldn't remember how to write my name. I sat there, and I eventually just gave up after I tore up 2 checks, and I just wrote this scrawl, and I gave the 3rd check in. And I thought, man, maybe I'm having a stroke, but because I've worked in the medical field for a while, I knew that wasn't really it. I didn't have those symptoms, except I couldn't remember how to write my name on this check. And then we got into Radical Freedom, and it was a couple days later, I just remember, oh my gosh, because I found this piece of paper where I was trying to write my name, and I couldn't do it. Because I was just writing my name, no problem again. So,
yeah,
it was kind of scary.
Good thing you'd already started Radical Freedom.
Exactly.
So just to cover the basics, I mean, Jeff does not have a history of stroke or cardiovascular disease, no thyroid issues, no other imbalances or any diagnosis that we are trying to deal with. It was really just these symptoms that we've listed, and when we ran the Dutch test at the end of the year, we found that his estrogen was really high.
I'd love to show you this as best I can. Some of you folks have done the Dutch test. Some of you may have looked at it online, and if you can, I'd encourage you to take a look. But I'm going to show you where my results were. As best we can, excuse us. This might even be
backwards.
It might show up backwards on this screen.
But I'll give you the numbers.
Take my word for it. So this is the end of the year of 2016. And there's a number right there that I've circled. You can see that it's gone into the red.
Yeah. Normal range for estrogen men his age 8 to 27, and he was 38.1, way above normal.
Way up there in estrogen.
Right. His cortisol levels we're going to bring up as well, because he was on the very, very high end. He's at almost 8,000, and normal is 45 to 8,500. So he is pretty high on the cortisol level. Yeah.
Even though my pattern for cortisol was considered in the normal range, it was really at the top end of the normal range.
Right. So looking at that, cortisol can be high from stress, but also the excess estrogen is inflammatory and can cause the cortisol to rise as well. So we kept all of this in mind moving forward, and we'll talk about what Jeff did about it, and then we'll share the results with you at the end. But we call this estrogen dominance, when the estrogen is high like this, especially in a man of over the normal range. We call it estrogen dominance or unopposed estrogen, because in women estrogen should be balanced with progesterone, and sometimes women can have high or even normal estrogen, but when progesterone is really low, that's still estrogen dominance, even though it's not technically over the normal range, because it's not getting the progesterone to oppose it. So in women we might call it unopposed estrogen, in men we definitely call it estrogen dominance, and it's a problem, right? It's not healthy for men to have too much estrogen, and it does affect a lot of different other hormonal pathways and causes a lot of symptoms. We'll go over some of the other symptoms that some other men might have, but I just want to point out that estrogen is a feminizing hormone in men. It's a feminizing hormone in women, and it also is a feminizing hormone in men. And so men often can feel like they've lost their drive and their libido, sex drive, but just their motivation for life in addition to their sex drive. And that's a real bummer. It can really make you feel like you're just not yourself at all. Like you just don't feel like a man. You don't feel strong. You don't feel masculine, and you just don't feel good. But there's other stuff like prostate problems, prostate enlargement, benign prostate, or risk of prostate cancer can be higher with estrogen dominance. Problems with urination, difficulty and increased frequency of urination as well in men. Erectile dysfunction, doesn't work at all, low libido, zero libido, depression, loss of motivation and drive, like I said earlier, fat, belly fat, man boobs. And this is a bummer because as you gain more estrogen, you gain more fat. Fat cells produce more estrogen. So you get in this horrible cycle of, yo-yoing through.
Right.
And it's a vicious cycle. It's really challenging. Muscle development is reduced. Body hair can be reduced. Veins become less prominent. So cardiovascular issues can come up, balding. We talked about man boobs, higher risk of cancers, cardiovascular disease. Oh, sweat and body odor changes. You mentioned that was one of yours. And skin can be thinning as well in both men and women. But so it looks like you're aging faster than you should.
Well, that's a big piece of it for sure. And at the end of the day, these are the symptoms, but the outcomes for a lot of people are, and I think this is where a lot of folks, and now I know, you lose confidence as a man. And certainly then you act differently and you behave differently, often even to the people that you care the most about. A lot of insecurities wrapped around that. And from the outside, the old way of thinking in the medical model is eat less food and exercise more. And that's absolutely not really where you want to go. It's an old model that's outdated, doesn't really work. And that truly was one of the biggest outcomes because I really haven't changed my diet very much at all. Not enough to lose 15 pounds. I lost 15 pounds in it was 3 weeks. Sure, I've gained a couple pounds back. My mom was just down from Canada visiting, and we went out and had lots of wine, and all the stuff we did with my mom. But I only gained 3 pounds back. 5 pounds, then I went down a couple pounds, and so now I'm right back on track. But I lost 15 pounds literally in 3 weeks, and that was definitely not by exercising anymore, and it certainly wasn't by changing my diet that radically. There are other things that are going on, and I can't wait for you to share about some of those pieces.
Well, like you just said, it's usually, it's very common for men that are overweight to have an estrogen dominance issue, not only because of the foods that they're eating that contain a lot of estrogen, like meats, dairy products that aren't organic and free of hormones and antibiotics. Those hormones that are fed to those animal products come into us and their estrogens, and so that's a problem, and that's one of the biggest sources actually for most American men to get their estrogen. But you weren't eating foods like that typically.
No, I wasn't eating all that many foods like that. I eat all my animal product is supposedly wild caught and organic. So if you think about it, that's where all of the chemicals in our food are concentrated into the top of the food chain, which is animals and fish and poultry. So that's where the chemicals are, and those are what we've blogged about and we've talked about in other Facebook
Numerous
lives.
times, yeah.
Those are endocrine disruptors. Those are things that mess up your hormones. So where would I be getting things that would cause estrogen? Could be my food, could be from the water because they're full of chemicals. All of our water systems are, and drugs, old medications and stuff which create estrogen. It could be a little bit from my food. When you mentioned cortisol, of course, what was I doing to raise cortisol? Part of it was the stress of my life, but the other part of it was things like sugar and caffeine will also raise cortisol. So I was adding that into the mix a little bit too. So we know that there was some environmental stuff, possibly, that was affecting my estrogen. Do we know that possibly there's a bit of food, a little bit, because my diet didn't change that much for me to gain that much weight and suddenly look way older than I should. And when you think about men, as you said, overweight, look around at any teenage boy, look around at any 20-year-old. or 25-year-old guy. It's now acceptable for them to be packing a pair of man boobs. Yeah, that's not necessarily at all from what they're eating or doing. It's also from what I experienced, which is this estrogen dominance. And where would that have come from?
Environmental chemicals, I would bet. Xenoestrogens is a term that you might hear. Endocrine disrupting chemicals, we've written about, blogged about, and talked about EDCs. That is probably likely one of the biggest sources of estrogen coming into Jeff's body because he wasn't eating a large amount of industrial animals. So those things include the BPAs found in plastics, in cash register receipts. When you grab that receipt, you're sucking up some estrogen. A lot of chemicals in pesticides and in weed killers, things that we breathe in every day. I mean, if you're in a park, you're going to get some of these estrogens. You're going to breathe some of them in. Phthalates found in fragrances, other cosmetics, so body care products, fire retardants, furniture, clothing, that new car smell. Not great to be smelling that. Open your windows when you have a new car. Pharmaceutical drugs that you might be taking, or if you're drinking tap water, you're taking pharmaceutical drugs because people pee out those drugs and metabolites of those drugs.
Throw it out.
And goes down the drain. It gets recycled back into our water, and we get that in our system. Industrial chemicals, agricultural chemicals, pesticides. These are chemicals that look like estrogens, and these xenoestrogens or chemical estrogens, opposed to the natural estrogens that a human body would produce, are 100 times the concentration of our own hormones. So that's a big deal. 100 times the natural amount of estrogens that your body would be producing. So not a surprise then when I see these Dutch tests with men and women's estrogens way off the chart. Clearly there's a toxicity issue. Another thing that Jeff's Dutch test did show us was that he had a sluggish metabolism or detox pathways for
That's
estrogen.
the biggest piece right there.
Right.
We know all this stuff is out there, and you can't avoid it. So that's part of what we do at FEWL is, we help you navigate away from where you're going to find these extra sources of estrogen. But the biggest piece with the Dutch test was and is that it shows whether or not genetically you actually have the pieces, the right pathways, the right biochemical pathways, and the amount of enzymes and all the rest in the right amounts in the right spaces to actually deal with this stuff that you're bringing in. And the Dutch test clearly showed that I don't, that I actually have a genetic deficiency, if you can call it that, where I'm weak in a certain pathway. There are multiple pathways in the detox system in the body, but in one of those pathways I'm actually quite weak. And not surprisingly, two of my sisters have also recently done the Dutch test. It's guaranteed. It's kind of like a genetic test. We're definitely related because they're also, they show the same exact issue with their detox pathway for estrogen. And I think you talked to one of my sisters today, and she's ecstatic because she's found the same results that I've had by doing similar things.
Yeah, feeling totally different in just a few weeks. So clearing out that estrogen is going to make you feel a lot better really quickly, in our experience, for sure. And the Dutch test is not specifically a genetic test, but we can pretty certainly be sure that because of Jeff's the ability of him to metabolize these estrogen is so sluggish, and because he does eat pretty well, it seems to be more of a genetic predisposition to not managing these toxins well, and many of us have this. Many of us do. And there's more testing you could do to see what other pathways are genetically going to make it a little more challenging for you to detoxify. But many Americans have this problem, and so we are, very big proponents of detoxing on a regular basis because, as Jeff said earlier, you can't avoid your exposure to many of these toxins. You just can't. So supporting your body's ability to detox is going to protect your hormones. It's important.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a few other things that you want to be mindful of. There are some really great plants and food sources of estrogens that you may or may not want to use in your diet for support. You might want to avoid things like soy that have a high amount of plant estrogens. We call them phytoestrogens. There are some people for instance, menopausal women that might on purpose want to use some of these sources of plant estrogens to support their body, and some, like men, might really want to avoid some of these things because they want to decrease the estrogen. I think it's always a good idea to talk to a practitioner if you're wanting to use use herbs or supplements to change your hormones or boost your hormones or decrease the hormones, because it can be kind of complicated and there's so many different factors. So we do recommend getting support from someone, and first testing to see where you're at is really, really useful. And there's some herbs that will decrease estrogen or promote more estrogen, and also affect other hormones as well. So it's just a really good idea to see where you're at first, and then work with somebody to make some decisions on what is a good protocol when it comes to foods and when it comes to using herbal supplements and nutritional supplements to make changes in your hormones.
Correct. Absolutely.
So we talked about all the endocrine disrupting chemicals. We talked about the fact that there's some hormones, hormone-like components to foods that you might want to be mindful of. And we'll talk about what you're going to do to decrease hormones or decrease the estrogen.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And at some point, because we only have a couple minutes left here, did you want to talk about the actual changes of how much my Dutch test
Yeah,
changed?
for sure.
Okay.
But I was just going to kind of list some of the things that anybody can do to be proactive and protective of their hormones. So foods, getting the right foods is important. Eating organic meats, fish, organic dairy when possible. Poultry for sure.
Anything that's an animal. If it breathes, jumps, or swims.
Yeah, try and get organic. Organic fruits and vegetables as well, because you're going to be avoiding those pesticides that can be endocrine disruptors as well. Avoiding processed foods, really, really important. Avoiding drinking the water like we talked about, definitely drink filtered water, because there are hormones in tap water. Using glass, stainless steel and ceramics or iron, instead of cooking with the nonstick. Those are all going to be putting estrogen disrupting chemicals into your body, and just trying to avoid all chemicals, deodorants, body care products, things like that. Those all are going to disrupt your hormones pretty drastically. So our FEWL program was designed to eliminate the amount of estrogen coming in and to boost your hormonal and detox pathways, so that whatever is in your system can be kind of unburdened and you can support your body's ability to naturally get rid of those things. We also talk about lifestyle as well as food, but lifestyle interventions to support your hormones and protect your hormones. So we started Jeff on the Radical Freedom program right after Christmas, right?
January 3rd.
January 3rd, okay, so right after the new year. And he implemented, and I think you did a lot of this stuff some of the time anyway, right? But you implemented it and you were very dedicated to the specifics of the lifestyle and the food protocol. And then we implemented some very specific products, and I don't know, Jeff, if you want to share with them your specific protocol. But each person's very individualized in their protocol based on the Dutch test. So I think I made these recommendations really specifically based on what we saw from the Dutch test and what we know from some of the other questionnaires that we use. Really helps us to personalize the product protocol and the food protocol.
That's a good point. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about what you're doing, what you can improve, certainly take advantage of the body toxicity test on our website, FEWL.io. Do the symptom severity test, and as well as, what are the other tests on there? I'm forgetting now.
We have some hormone tests and some gut tests and lots of different things.
So those will help you understand exactly where you are or are not in good space or needing room for improvement. It'll help you direct as well. It helps us also direct your individual needs. But for me personally, as I said, my diet wasn't that bad. I know that I eat better than 95% of people in the country. But what was happening was I certainly was having 5 or 6 cups of coffee a week. And as we found out, caffeine, particularly for me, coffee, with this missing piece in my detox pathways, has a much stronger impact than it might it does on many other people. So I got rid of 5 cups of coffee a week. I went down to 0, which means that I replaced it with more water, which means I was flushing my system. And the other thing I did was got rid of the sweets. And so how many sweets was I having? I was probably having about, on average, a sweet a day. So whether that might have been, one of the cookies at work, because there's a billion different sweets at my workplace, other workplace, or whether that was coming home and having a sweet, like a dessert. So I got rid of a sweet a day. So if you think about it, I got rid of 1 cup of coffee a day. I got rid of basically 1 sweet a day. And as I said, I was drinking about a bottle of wine every 10 days, so whatever that is, a half a glass of wine every day. It's not really a major change. It's not enough under the calorie in versus calorie out formula to have equivalated to 15 pounds of weight loss in 3 weeks. All of it was off my boobs and my gut. Because again, estrogen and my cortisol was up because of the sugar and the alcohol and the caffeine. It was all targeting my belly. So really, I didn't really change much at all. The other thing that I did, which accelerated all of that change, was I took some specific supplements targeted to helping my detox pathway, what we call methylate, and boosting my liver to help remove this stuff sooner. So I took every day, I'd start with a detox shake. In fact, I do the detox shake every day now because I love it. It's just become what I do. It's what I crave instead of coffee.
So which provides protein, nutrients, as well as some detox support for your liver, your colon, your kidneys, your lymphatic system. So just a nice, really nice, gentle daily dose of detox support.
Exactly. And as well, I take a liver detox so I can accelerate the removal of the estrogen.
And if I can just say that the liver detox product is not something you want to use every day for a long period of time. It is designed to be used very specifically for a month or 2, depending on your levels, and it is very specifically going to help bind to those estrogen molecules and help get rid of them. And
Indeed.
So we'll show his test results shortly and show that in fact it did work.
Amazingly
Very
well.
short period of time.
Totally. And that's true. So in terms of our Radical Freedom, or in terms of any of our programs, we do a constant check-in with people, because as your body changes, your needs change as well. But part of what we do with Radical Freedom, in my case, because my gut health was also affected, we were starting to work with Candida, because I have this massive skin rash and flaky skin and crazy sugar cravings, that kind of thing. So we were targeting the Candida. So for 3 months I was targeting Candida, and then I would switch, and then we're going to start looking at parasite rebalance in the next 3 months. That's for me. Might be different for you. But that included...
So the fungus killer for the Candida.
Got the fungus killer here. Oh, I forgot systemic enzymes.
The enzymes, yeah, we use the enzymes in conjunction. Yeah. And then the methyl support for his methylation, which clearly was slowed down, at least in terms of estrogen, because it showed on your Dutch test. And all your sisters had that too, so clearly is genetic.
Indeed, absolutely. So those are the products I started with. I've noticed so much of a difference, and we already know that I'm starting to change, and I'll be weaning off and switching some products as I go into the next phase. But here's the piece for me. I made sure that I didn't do any extra activity, because I wanted to make sure that it was really coming from these other pieces, supplements and a little bit of a diet change. Now that I actually have energy and I'm looking to go and be active as we move to the next part of my journey, I'm going to redo the Dutch test in 2 months. I'm actually doing 3 Dutch tests every 2 months. You can if you want. You probably no need to, but I'm going to do that. Because I want to see in the next phase, as I start to increase my activity, how that's going to have an impact. And then, of course, the third phase for me will be, how the impact with the activity plus, as we talked about more for me, particularly a bit more of a parasite rebalance in my gut. But that's kind of how I'm journeying.
So it's 6:30, so let's wrap up with the numbers now after a few weeks on the FEWL program.
Well, Kimberly asks, how much is the test? What is the testing method? And how do you gain access to it through FEWL? Good question, Kim. We charge $350 for the Dutch test, which is actually significantly less than most practitioners. In fact, we have people from around the country who call us and say, wow, you guys give amazing service, with the amount of debriefing and the support that we have with our medical team to really understand what happened with you for that price. And
so we spend about an hour with you once you get the test results back, and review it with you and give you some suggestions, and talk actually about 3 definite things that you can implement right away to support you in your pathways, your hormonal pathways.
Indeed. Amazing value.
And you get it on our website.
And you get it on our website, that's
So
right. Yeah.
you just order it on the website, or you give us a call and we can support you in getting that ordered, and we mail it out to you. And then give you instructions on when the best time is for you to take it. For women that are menstruating, there's a specific time during the cycle that you should be taking the test for the best results. For men, anytime. So we'll just send it out to you and talk to you about the best time to take it. And then once it comes back, we let you know, and we schedule an hour-long session to go over it with you.
And do
So that's
follow
how
up
that
thereafter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
All right.
So before, I had highlighted that my estrogen was quite high. It was a 38, and that my cortisol was at 8,000. There was a couple of other things there that showed up too. But here's my newest. I don't know that you can see this, but I'll hold it up. My estrogen dropped from 38 down to 17. That's a 55% difference in my estrogen in 2 months. Like, are you kidding me? And like I said, I just changed barely anything in my diet, and I took some kick-ass supplements as well. The other thing that showed up for me was my DHEA. We talked about DHE a lot 2 webinars ago, and that's the anti-aging hormone. So yes, in the last 2 years, I've aged, it looks like to me anyway, a lot of years. And my DHEA has gone from low to at least mid-range now in 2 weeks. The other thing that changed is my cortisol. My cortisol was not necessarily high.
It was on the high end. It definitely was on the high end.
I've lost 25% of my cortisol. So I went from 8,000 down to just over 5,000.
So mid-range, which is a nice place to be. And so that cortisol was probably from the inflammation from some of the foods he was taking in, but also from the high estrogen and the toxicity of that estrogen in the body. So it's a good sign that the cortisol's down more to mid-range now.
We'll post that
Yeah.
on one of the blogs. We'll PDF it and post it, and you can see it yourselves.
Right.
So, well, here we are.
All right. Any other questions before we go? Wrap it up.
Thanks for indulging me to talk about my amazing experience, and thank you, Kim, for guiding me through all of it. Well, Gretchen, you've been with us for a little while, and certainly because you were here and participating, we, as always, want to honor you for your time. And we're going to pop into the mail for you a tub of Ignite, because we know how much you love the Ignite, and we'll get that off to you this week. Thank you very much, and Kimberly, thank you for your questions around the Dutch test as well. As with every week, as a wrap-up, our business is 100% word of mouth. We absolutely thrive on the referrals that you folks bring to us, because we know that for you to refer your friends and family, it means that you've trusted us, and that you actually you enjoy working with us. So thank you very, very much. Please go to our website, go to our cart, review our producs, and tell anybody else that you know that you think would do well to connect with us for a free strategy session in helping them move to whatever their health goal might be.
All right. Well, see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Oh, and next week, we have 2 things going on next week. We have our usual Wednesday webinar, and then on Thursday night, we are starting our every other week. We're actually doing an official webinar. So invitations will be going out to that. We're going to be talking about Dutch test in depth again. Yeah.
So Wednesday will be our Facebook Live, weekly Wednesday. Facebook Live, and Thursday is an actual formal webinar that we're going to do on hormones, and do just a really big overview on hormones and how they work together, and the importance of balancing them, and just a little more details on why we think hormone health is so important.
Yes, indeed. Oh, and as well for our Dutch test, yes, it's $350. However, you can pay for it in installments, so you don't have to take the big hit for it all in one shot.
Pay in two installments, monthly installments.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Have a great night.
Have a good night. Toodaloo.